Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is part 3 of my low-carb tortilla mega review. In the previous 2 videos in this series, I reviewed and did glucose testing on 13 different tortillas. In this video, I am testing a whopping 14 more. Over the course of the last 3 weeks, I have subjected my body to a fair amount of glucose spikes and inflammation. I've also subjected my wallet to a pretty big hit as well, as many of the brands that I'm trying out in this particular review are online only. But I tell you what, that's it for the intro. Let's get in to tasting and testing. For the first tortilla, I will be returning to a brand that I tested previously, La Bandarita. These are the Carb Counter Street Tacos. Taking a look at the nutritional information. Serving size is 1 tortilla, 20 calories per serving. I'm probably going to have 2 because I think that is a more realistic serving size. Anyhow, total fat, half a gram. Total carbs, 5 grams. All of which are dietary fiber, and it says all 5 grams are insoluble fiber. Protein, 2 grams. In terms of ingredients, we have water, modified wheat starch, wheat protein, cellulose, extra virgin olive oil, salt, xanthan gum, sorbic acid, aluminum-free leavening, preservatives, which is calcium propionate and sorbic acid, and dough conditioner. The texture on these is very nice. It's springy, just a little bit, sturdy. I think this would hold up quite well to whatever you want to put in it. And it tastes pretty close to a flour tortilla. I mean, it's kind of unremarkable, but it's not at all bad. So I'm going to finish eating this one, and then I'll eat another, and I'll be back in 2 hours to see what impact it had on my glucose. Okay, let's take a look at the results. Not bad. An 18-point rise in glucose, so not a spike, just a gentle rise. And if we were to compare that then to the other La Bandarita, just the straight-up carb counter, you can see it scored just slightly better with a 15-point rise. And I think probably those are within the margin of error of one another. So essentially the same. If you want a slightly larger tortilla, just go with the carb counter. If you want to get some smaller ones, go with the street taco. Or if you're opposed to the ingredients, go with neither of them. But it is nice to see that there is consistency between the 2 tests there. Pretty much the same. Okay, now we have the Hero tortilla. In terms of ingredients, we have water, resistant wheat starch, wheat protein, canola oil, milled flaxseed, 2% or less of leavening, and it lists all the leavening agents, allulose, salt, fava bean protein, yeast, guar gum, calcium propionate, and fumaric acid, and enzymes. For nutritional information, serving size is 1 tortilla, 80 calories, 5 grams of total fat, 16 grams of total carbohydrate, of which 15 is dietary fiber, 1 gram of allulose for a net 0, and 7 grams of protein. Now I do like the look of these, like they've gone on a griddle or something. They look pretty authentic. They've got some good stretch to them. I think this would hold up quite well with whatever you want to stuff in it, and I tend to stuff an awful lot of stuff in my burritos or tacos. Here we go. That's a decent tasting flour tortilla. And I really like the texture on this. I think you could absolutely pack this and it's not going to tear. But I am going to finish this and then I will be back in 2 hours to see what the glucose impact was. So before I pull up the glucose results on that Hero tortilla, I got to say that the more I ate of it, the less I liked it. Something about it just didn't taste quite right to me, and I can't quite put my finger on it. My intention is that once I get through all of these tortillas, including the ones from the previous episodes, I'm going to take the ones that scored the best and see how they perform in actual preparation. So I'm going to cook them, I'll use them as a taco, a quesadilla, something. But if the glucose score is bad on any of them, it's kind of pointless to do. So I'm getting the scores first. Which brings me to the score on this one, and it is okay. This I was not expecting. It scored a 9 out of 10, a stable response. It didn't really even register any sort of movement. I guess the reason I'm surprised at this is when I tried out the Hero bread, like the white bread, I believe it was a 42-point spike. So I was really kind of expecting that with the tortillas as well. I'm a little bit perplexed, but there it is. I mean, the numbers don't lie. Stable response. All right, let's take a look at the results here from my second trial of the Hero tortilla. See right here, it scored an 8 or a stable response of just 12 points. We'll compare that to the original trial, and you can see more or less identical. Now, I'm not going to get into the habit of doing multiple tests for each of these products. The reason I did it for the Hero tortilla is I saw such a discrepancy between the Hero bread, which is largely the same ingredients, and the Hero tortilla. Let me just show you that. So the white line right there, that is the Hero bread. The green is the Hero tortilla. So there's definitely something different going on with the tortilla. I've tested it twice. I've confirmed that it's a stable response. For the next tortilla, I'm trying out Mama Lupes low-carb tortillas. It says kosher, 3 net carbs, 0 gram trans fats, no cholesterol, no hydrogenated oils, good source of fiber, no added sugar. In terms of nutritional facts, a serving size is 1 tortilla, 70 calories, 2 grams of fat, 10 grams of total carbs, 7 grams are dietary fiber for a net 3 grams of protein. Now, I am not going to read off the entire list of ingredients here. It is very long. I'll put it right here below me. Hopefully you can still see my face up above it. Let me read some of the things that I think are going to be problematic for people. Lots of wheat. Wheat gluten, cornstarch, wheat protein isolate. Let's see, later on whole wheat flour. We've got vegetable shortening. It says palm and or soybean oil. And I think by now you know how I feel about soybean oil. Palm oil, it doesn't indicate if it's palm seed or palm fruit, and it doesn't say that it's sustainable. So generally when I see that, I kind of fear the worst. I assume that it's probably non-sustainable palm seed oil, but I don't know. Let's see, modified wheat starch, sucralose. Yeah, there's a lot. Well, I see cornstarch again later on in the list. This is not going to be confused with clean keto. Although it does not actually refer to itself as keto anywhere on the package, it just says low carb. Now, unlike a number of those flour tortillas that are already prepared, these still seem very doughy. And as a result, I'm going to follow the preparation instructions and cook it on a skillet. But yeah, it's a little bit of an effort here, just trying to peel one off. Yeah, still very, very doughy. I'm trying to be gentle here, not to tear them. All right. Getting a single tortilla off of this stack was not the easiest thing in the world. But now I'm going to pop this on a cast iron skillet and cook it up for a few seconds. So this should please the tortilla purists, at least the way that I cooked it, maybe not the ingredients. Let this cool just a second more before I taste it. The smell is a little bit like popcorn, actually. The taste of this reminds me a lot of Wheat Chex cereal. I don't really feel that it tastes a lot like any tortilla that I've ever tasted. It doesn't taste like a corn tortilla. I wouldn't say that it tastes strongly like a wheat tortilla. Like I said, it tastes more like a breakfast cereal to me. But I will finish this and be back in 2 hours to see how my blood glucose has performed. All right, let's take a look at the blood glucose response for the Mama Lupes. I'm honestly a little bit surprised at this. Only a 12-point rise in glucose. Now I will tell you that as I continued to eat that tortilla, it had a bitter taste to it. I don't know what I would describe it as other than it kind of tasted like Chex, like wheat Chex cereal that was stale and kind of bitter. So despite the low glucose rise on that, I think the sort of bad oils in it, just sort of overall dirty ingredients and not great taste, make that kind of a hard one for me to recommend. For the next tortilla, it is one of probably the two most requested tortillas I've gotten from my previous reviews. It's the a la Madre corn tortilla. Now this one I'm pretty excited about. It doesn't say keto anywhere on here, it just says low carb, but I miss corn tortillas. It's one of the few things that I do miss on keto, so it would be great if I don't get a glucose response from this. In terms of ingredients, we have white corn cooked with lime water, sodium propionate, cellulose gum, fumaric acid, sorbic acid, phosphoric acid, and propionic acid. A lot of acid. No bad fats listed in here. Serving size is 2 tortillas, 60 calories, 0 grams total fat, 7 grams total carbohydrate, 1 gram of dietary fiber, 3 grams of sugar. So I think we're still looking, it says 3 net carbs per tortilla. Yep, that math works out. And 2 grams of protein. Now, these tortillas, they've been pressed, but they're still essentially uncooked. So I'm gonna give these a few seconds on the griddle before I eat them. All right, we have the first of the 2 tortillas. This has been cooked up on a little cast iron griddle or skillet. I would call that a fairly decent corn tortilla. Back when I used to press my own using masa, I would also include lard. And you can definitely tell that this is missing some fat. Just the mouthfeel, the overall richness of flavor. Anyhow, I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna eat the other one. I'll be back in 2 hours to share the glucose results. All right, let's take a look at the results. A 39-point spike in my glucose from those a la Madre tortillas. Now, not only did we have a fairly decent spike here, let me show you the Dexcom software right at this particular moment. It took 3 hours for me to get back to my baseline, my starting point. So not only did we have a decent sized spike, it was long. Like I said, it took a full 3 hours for me to get back to where I was before I ate those tortillas. So I'm gonna have to say no-go on the a la Madre. For the next 2 tortillas, I'm going to be trying out 2 flavors of the Olé Xtreme Wellness. If you've watched the previous tortilla review videos, you saw that the Olé Xtreme Wellness scored as one of the best tortillas in terms of overall blood glucose response. It does have some wheat product in it, but it doesn't have any crummy oils. And looking at both of these, they both use extra virgin olive oil as the oil, as opposed to some of the seed oils, soybean oil, etc. Both of these are 15 grams of total carbs, 11 grams of dietary fiber, for a net 4 grams of carbs per tortilla. The spinach and herb flavor has the little keto-friendly thing on there, whereas the tomato basil does not, even though same carb count. And in the picture, they've got some breaded onion rings. That doesn't look very keto to me. So for this segment, I'm going to try out the tomato basil. The texture on these, they're good. It's pliable. I think this would hold up very well to any sort of a wrap or taco, burrito, whatever you're having. I don't know that I pick up much in the way of tomato flavor. There is some basil at the end, but it is not until the very, very end. So this is not a powerfully flavored tortilla. But I'm going to finish this and then I'll be back in 2 hours to let you know how my blood glucose responded. All right, let's take a look at the glucose response. Scored a stable response. It doesn't say what it was, so I'm going to click on Analyze. 10-point glucose change is all. So it performed pretty close to the other Xtreme Wellness, which I believe scored a 12. I'll come back tomorrow and I'm going to try out the, what's it called? Spinach and herbs. So I tried out the Xtreme Wellness spinach and herbs yesterday. In terms of the flavor, I think if you just presented me with one and didn't tell me what it was, I don't know that I could identify it as anything other than a tortilla. The flavor is not especially strong. But let's take a look at what the glucose response was. All right, there we go. 15 points, so very much in line with the other two. So 10 to 15 points, not an especially big deal. So if you're not opposed to wheat, you could do a lot worse than these for tortillas. Next up, we have La Tortilla Factory. These are the flour tortillas, and in, I think it was part 1 of the tortilla review, I had done their whole wheat tortillas. And one of the things that one of my viewers called to my attention was, these are just par-baked. And I was basically eating partially raw tortillas. So I've got a cast iron skillet heating behind me. We're going to cook these up. But first, let's talk about macros and ingredients. Serving size is 1 tortilla, calories 70, total fat grams 2.5, total carbs 15 grams, of which 9 is dietary fiber, for a net 6, I believe. No other sweeteners or anything in there to subtract from it. And 5 grams of protein. In terms of ingredients and what might be bothersome to some people, this does have wheat, so if you've got issues with wheat or gluten, that's in here. In terms of the oil, they use palm fruit oil. If I just see palm oil, I generally assume that it's palm seed oil and thus heavily processed and probably inflammatory. But this specifies that it is the palm fruit oil, which I consider a good oil, provided it's harvested sustainably. It does not indicate that this is sustainable. So at least it's not inflammatory, but if you do have environmental concerns over palm oil, then, well, this has palm oil. Now I'm going to pop this onto the cast iron. All right, I believe we've got this cooked now. We got a little bit of brown on it. Kind of warm to the touch. It's not as pliable, but I'm wondering if I put this in a tortilla warmer and it's steamed a little bit, that might help out. We'll give it a taste. That is way better than the uncooked one that I had in the previous video. There is still at the end a little bit of a, I don't know what I would call it. Not necessarily grittiness, but as I swallow it, I don't know, maybe grittiness. It is a little bit sandy when I swallow it. Anyhow, I'm going to finish this and I will be back once I have 2 hours of glucose data. All right, let's take a look at the glucose results for La Tortilla Factory's flour tortilla. It doesn't get any better than this. Let's go to analyze. 4 points. That's it. That is pretty exceptional. Now, it still does have wheat, and it tasted a lot better than that other, like the whole wheat one from La Tortilla Factory. I'm almost tempted to try that one again. That only scored 9 points in terms of overall movement, but I hated the taste because I hadn't cooked it. The problem is it still has canola oil, which is on my list of heavily processed, I don't like to consume sort of oils. So I think we're just going to write that one off. But if you don't have an issue with wheat, I think we've got a winner here. Next up, we have the tortillas from Extraordinary Bites. I found these in the freezer section at Walmart along with some bagels, and I'm not sure if it was buns or bread. That'll be a future video. In this video though, we're going to try out their tortillas. For nutrition facts, it is 60 calories per tortilla, 3 grams of total fat, 19 grams of total carbohydrates, of which 15 are dietary fiber, for a net 4 grams, and 4 grams of protein. The ingredient list is printed white on this light green. It is practically impossible to read. I'll just call out the important parts. A lot of wheat product, wheat starch, wheat gluten, unbleached wheat flour. The oil on this is palm oil. And whenever I see palm oil, and it doesn't say like palm fruit oil, and it doesn't say sustainable, I assume that it's probably palm seed oil, which is processed, and I also assume that it's probably not harvested sustainably. Those are just my assumptions, because I think generally if a company cares about that, they're going to put it on the package. In terms of the tortilla itself, these do seem a little bit thicker than some of the others that I have tried. I mean, it folds very nicely without tearing. And now the taste test. I would say that tastes very, very close to a regular flour tortilla. I think a regular flour tortilla may have a little bit more sweetness to it, but this is very close. I'll be back in 2 hours though, once I've got the data, to let you know what the impact was on my glucose. All right, I am back with the glucose results. Not very good. A 38-point spike in glucose, and you can see that even now I'm still up over that 110 threshold. At least it looks that way. Let's go over the Dexcom. Yeah, still elevated 2 hours later. So we haven't recovered yet from this spike. So I'm gonna have to say extraordinary bites, no go. Next up, we have another online-only product, and this one also has been requested a lot from my viewers, many of whom use it to make pizza. It's the Cut de Carb flatbread. In terms of ingredients, it's probably the simplest list of ingredients I've seen so far. Filtered water, unbleached flour, whole wheat flour, psyllium husk, salt, and yeast. In terms of nutrition facts, a serving size is 1 full sheet, which we'll see in a second, 80 total calories, 1/2 gram of fat, 14 grams of total carbohydrates, of which 5 grams are fiber for a net 9. So still fairly carby. I suppose though, if you're making this into a pizza and splitting it with somebody, then maybe not so much. 3 grams of protein. The sheets themselves are extremely thin. In fact, they're tearing on me. I would compare this to, it's a little thicker than like phyllo dough, but not a whole lot. It also kind of reminds me a little bit of lefse in terms of the thickness of it. Let's tear off a chunk here. Yeah, even the texture and the taste reminds me a lot of lefse. And I'm pretty sure that's made with potato, but this, I mean, it's not bad tasting, but it is remarkably thin, these pieces. I don't know how exactly you're gonna make a pizza out of this unless it really crisps up in the oven, but I'm gonna finish this and then we'll see how my blood glucose responds over the next 2 hours. All right, back with the results. What do we have? A 22-point rise in glucose. So not great, but not horrible. It's not a spike. And that may be good enough for it to show up in part 4, where I test out real-world applications of some of these different tortillas and flatbreads. For the final tortillas that I'm going to test out, this has by far been the most requested brand for my previous 2 videos, and that is Mr. Tortilla. A year or 2 ago, Mr. Tortilla reached out to me and asked if I would like to be an affiliate marketing partner with them. And I told them no. And I told them the reason no is because they used soybean oil. Well, I'm excited to announce that they have shifted away from soybean oil. So they heard my complaint or the complaints of other people and have moved on to expeller pressed avocado oil. I have 4 different flavors of their tortillas. I have the 3 chili, the savory spinach, the pico de gallo, and multigrain. Now, all of them have very similar ingredients, so I'm not going to read off all the ingredients of each of them. I will tell you that the nutritional information, serving size is 1 tortilla, 15 calories, total fat 1.5 grams, total carbs 3 grams, of which 2 grams are dietary fiber for a net 1 gram, and 1 gram of protein. Also, I plan to eat one of each of these, so a total of 4 tortillas, depending on what my glucose response is. If it's over 30, then that's a spike, and I'm gonna have to try and figure out what then would be the sort of spike if I just had 2, which I think is probably a realistic serving size. In terms of ingredients, we have water, oat fiber, vital wheat gluten, whole wheat flour, soybean flour, which may be a concern for some people, expeller pressed avocado oil, calcium propionate, aluminum-free baking powder, sea salt, monodiglycerides, soy lecithin, potassium sorbate, fumaric acid, xanthan gum, guar gum, sodium metabisulfite. Now the package doesn't say anything about cooking these on a skillet or anything like that. I think that the texture is pretty good. I think this is going to hold up fine, like a little street taco. But let's see how they taste, starting with a multigrain. Not an especially big fan of that. Texture-wise, it feels like it's missing a little bit of chew. Taste-wise, it kind of feels like someone just took a cheaper wheat bread, like not a true whole wheat, like really hearty bread, but that sort of whitish, wheatish, and just flattened it out. That's kind of what it tastes like. Next we have the savory spinach, and I'm starting to second guess myself a little bit on whether these are just par-baked or fully done, just sort of based on how moist this kind of looks. Also in terms of ingredients for these other 3, essentially the same, just plus, a little bit of flavoring. I'm going to take a bite of this and then make a decision whether or not I want to heat up a skillet and try them that way. I'm not loving this either. I'm going to heat up a skillet and see if that changes the taste on these. Just because I want to be fair in terms of my review. All right, returning to the multigrain. The texture's better. The taste reminds me of a breakfast cereal. I'm not sure what, maybe Wheaties. Don't love the taste in terms of for a tortilla. Back to the spinach. I don't know that that's much of an improvement. Not a huge fan of the flavor. Pico de gallo. Better, but I don't know if you didn't tell me that this was pico de gallo in terms of the flavor, I don't think I'd be able to tell you what it is. It doesn't bring a lot in terms of flavor. And finally, the 3 chili. This one I think I may have left on the skillet just a smidge too long. Got slightly stiff. That's not too bad. It does bring a little bit of heat. Got a little bit on the sides of my tongue and in my throat. Decent, I would say of the 4, this is my favorite. But where the rubber hits the road is going to be what my glucose results are like over the next 2 hours. I'm going to finish these and I'll be back to let you know. Okay, I'm back and let's take a look at the results for 4 Mr. Tortilla tortillas. That is not a bad response at all. Just 16 points of glucose change. That's pretty respectable. And even though I didn't love the flavor, I think that glucose response is good enough to make this a finalist for part 4 of the tortilla review, where I try out real-world applications. So now that I've got 3 of these episodes in the bag, I am going to take the finalists, the tortillas that I feel are the best in terms of glucose response, lack of inflammation, and as good of ingredients as we can get. I mean, they're not great from a keto standpoint, but I'm going to take, let's see how many we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 that are going to show up in part 4, where I'm going to test these out. I'm going to see how they fry up as chips, how they hold up as tacos once I got some meat and some stuffing in them, and maybe even quesadillas or something. So from this episode, the winners were La Bandarita Street Tacos. Not a surprise because they were one of the winners in episode 1. They do contain wheat, but at least they have a decent fat, did not cause me inflammation. Both of the Xtreme Wellness tortillas scored well. Again, contain wheat, but again, not an inflammatory fat for me. La Tortilla Factory had probably the best response of all, and it tasted like a real tortilla. At only 4 points of glucose movement, that will be moving on to the finals. The final two that are going to make it into the finals were kind of iffy. Cut to carb, sort of iffy, based on the glucose response of 22 points. That's still fairly high. Additionally, it had the highest net carbs at 9. It'll be interesting to see how they work as chips, though, given that it's a fairly thin flatbread. I think that's where this one might excel. The other is Mr. Tortilla. And the reason that that's sort of on the fence for me, even though it didn't have soybean oil, it does have soy. And I know that a lot of my viewers are really opposed to soy. Additionally, from a flavor standpoint, they were just kind of meh. But I still plan on including them in episode 4. I hope that you found these videos so far to be interesting and helpful, and maybe even saved you some money. If it did, feel free to click that thanks button down there and buy me a cup of coffee or something. Like I said, this was an expensive video to make. And if you don't feel like that, you can always just click the like button, then also hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber already, and tap that bell to turn on all notifications so you don't miss the next video. Incidentally, part 4 is probably going to come out in October. I've got kind of a full schedule for September. But that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching.